Get through when it's over. All right. Welcome to our October meeting. Thank you all for being here both in person and on Zoom. Appreciate it. As always, we will start our meetings with approval of minutes from September 12th. Has everyone had a chance to look over the minutes? All right, we'll need a motion to approve.
I move it.
So moved. Seconded. Seconded. Is there any discussion? Do the minutes need to be amended in any way? Nope. All right, then we will proceed to vote. All in favor of approval of the minutes, raise your hand. Electronically, you can choose the raise the hand option. Great. All right, you may lower your hands. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Right, one abstention. Thank you. The motion passes. All right, moving on. I just have a few brief remarks before we go to the next section. I attended last month's Board of Trustees meeting to present the system-wide FACSF award that I mentioned at the last meeting, and I did so with Barbara Kraken, who is the FS president from SIUE. And I'm currently working with the Provost office as she scheduled meetings with colleges to discuss her academic strategy. That's all I have for now for my report. I will certainly have more next month as we start doing those meetings, especially. But however, outside of my report, I wanted to say just a couple things about today's meeting. First, I want to please make sure that discourse is kept civil and constructive. And I'm going to keep us to time on this meeting, so I will try not to interrupt people, but please forgive me if I do so. And then lastly, for the Q&A with the Chancellor and the Provost, I ask that you please keep to one question and try to be as brief as possible so that we can get through as many questions as we can. If we have more questions that we have time to answer in the 20 minutes for that Q&A session, the Chancellor has mentioned to me that you are welcome to email him directly with your questions at the bottom. All right, so that is my report. We can move on. Is the Chancellor and Pros, are you? I see you. Fantastic.
I think we're both here.
Awesome. Go ahead. We can move on to your reports.
All right. Well, first of all, let me say happy fall. It's beautiful outside. If you got a chance to walk around, feel the cold air, hope you guys are doing well. Campus looks absolutely beautiful. I think the leaves are finally starting to change. I always get confused in trying to find out what I'm presenting at different meetings, but I wanted to take some time to just recap a little bit on what I know we've talked to the executive cabinet about, and that's as it relates to enrollment. And many of you have obviously seen some of the numbers, but want to make sure you have those numbers. I know we post them all over the place, but it's good information to know, especially now as we start to look to the fall of 2024 to see what enrollment targets we want to hit there. And the reason why it's important of these numbers I'm sharing with you, this is the month that we start paying out the increases and raises. So we've got some faculty and staff raises that you should begin to see if you haven't already in your paychecks. A lot of that is a direct result of our tuition revenue. And it's just a part of what we said we would do if we hit certain triggers in enrollment or state appropriations. We've done that. So those dollars are going to be coming back to our faculty and staff. So that's some good news for us. I know we've been able to try and do that over the last 3 years. We're going to keep trying to do that, but we've got to hit our numbers, and that's why we're already focused on fall of 2023. A lot of effort, a lot of work there. So hats off to everyone involved in making that happen. That's a really big piece. A shift that we're focusing on now is obviously retention. And I wanted you to really be introduced to our new Director of Institutional Effectiveness Research and Planning, David Shirley. This was probably for some of you the first time you will meet David. If you were at the retention retreat, you got a chance to meet him there. So, but I did want him to just give a very quick recap on some of the retention work. It's not enough just to recruit students in, that we obviously have had some success. As you can see in the chat, I put some data there, but it really now is our focus on how do we keep those students here from orientation to graduation. So David, if you'd introduce yourself and give some quick comments, and then we'll close out with my report.
Excellent. Hello, everybody. Nice to meet you all. As Chancellor Lane said, I'm the new Director for Institutional Effectiveness Planning and Research. And yeah, we had our retention retreat a couple weeks ago and went over a lot of our data that we have stored in our dashboards, and just tried to break some of these things out to give everybody a good overview of where we are with retention, where we would like to be, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to go through a couple of slides really quick, if that's all right. Let me share my screen. All right, so hopefully everybody can see this. All right, so just a quick recap. So really what we did is we started with defining retention as the number of our fall semester students who are first time in college full-time students. And that's that measurement's taken at the time whether they return for the following spring or for the following fall. And so then we just looked at what do these figures look like over time. We see some volatility for the fall to spring undergraduate retention, again, over time since 2013 to fall 2022. So each one of these years represents a fall. So let's look at fall 2013. That's at 87.1. That's measuring the students who came in fall 2013 and then came back spring 2014. So keep that logic in mind as we move forward. And with these, we broke them down by the various colleges. If you pay attention to the bottom two rows, fall 2022, we've got them averaged out. And really we see that, if we focus on fall 2022, the yellow, we see that there's really a couple schools that fall underneath the average there, School of Ed and students in our exploratory. And then for our 9-year average, that last row, we've got four different colleges or schools that are retaining students fall to spring under that 9-year average. Same logic here for fall to fall, looking at it over time, again, broken down by the colleges and schools. So the data is there, and I'll make these slides available afterwards. So overall, we're looking for retention rate of about 90% by 2030 for fall to spring, and 80% by 2030 fall to fall. And we didn't want to just stop with percentages. We wanted to see, are there any significant contributors or indicators that tell us, hey, there are certain demographics for our students that might stand out. So what we found was that if a new student, and we isolated the 2022 undergraduate population, and we excluded the students who earned 0 credit hours just to try to help clean up the population being tested there. And so we found that if students who earned a high school GPA of 2.75 and up, and all of these in the green, if these green 1 through 5 if these were the case, these students were significantly more likely to retain fall to spring. Likewise, if this was the case on the right, whereas 1 through 5, if they had these factors, they were less likely to be retained. And these are all significant factors that popped up in our regression analyses. And so same with the table below with fall, with the factors that are impacting students, more likely to be retained to fall or less likely to be retained to the following fall. And so then we broke some of these factors down by percentage across the colleges. And so also establishing some goals for 2030 for the various risk factors. And we found that, for the most part, we've got some work to do, which should be really great, because it does seem like there's a lot of low-hanging fruit for us to pursue. And also, it was pretty important to isolate some of our programs to see if any of our programs, just enrollment in programs, had any impact on a likelihood to be retained. And so we found that if students were, if we excluded our exploratory students, because we know generally speaking, our exploratory students are really impacting the model historically. So if we exclude those students, we find that students in automotive tech, radiological sciences, if they were enrolled in fall 2022, they're more likely to be retained to spring 2023. These 4 programs, starting with sport administration, if they were enrolled in fall 2022, were less likely to be retained in spring 2023. And the logic follows with if they were enrolled in spring 2023 programs where they were more or less likely to be retained. We also covered graduation rates, looking at graduation rates from a 4 and 6 year perspective, following the same cohorts. And so over time, this is information that we have on our dashboards, easy to find, but shows over time how our graduation rates have been tracking. There is a trend upward. And so again, kind of setting some goals here for a 2026 cohort, hoping to have these graduation rates up to about 55% for our 4-year and 61% for our 6-year. And when we think about graduation rates, we know that it's really tough to measure graduation, and make changes immediately and hope that, we'll see these in the next 4 to 6 years. So really it's helpful to look at progression as an indicator for graduation. Progression really meaning, how are these students?
You have been muted.
Did I mute? Am I good? Keep going?
Good, you're back.
All right. Whew. Okay, great. So progression, really looking at how a student is moving from one level to the next. And so if we isolated the fall 2020 cohort and found that of the students who were retained each progressive year from that cohort, these percentages, 70%, 51%, 70%, continued on to the next levels. But it seemed like there was a bit of a stall in the junior status. And then if we look at some other predictive factors for these, what are some significant factors for them to return as a sophomore in their following year, or stay as a freshman, or return as a junior in their 3rd year, or even stay as a freshman in their 3rd year. And if you bring all of this together, you kind of find that overall, these same demographics are really popping up as significant factors that we need to pay attention to for our retention and progression, in hopes to see our rates increase over time. And we challenged everybody, tasked them at the retreat to complete and to craft their plans for what are they going to do about it. And these plans are going to be due November 1st. And hopefully we'll see some good stuff out of there and be able to review those. And we just reminded everybody that, we have tools in place to make these changes. So, yep. That's Chancellor, off to you.
Really quickly, I'll remind people on Zoom you're muted if you're not speaking.
Okay, David, you want to stop sharing there?
Yep.
And I know that we've got this information. Again, we can make it available. The idea was that obviously we shift a little bit of our focus to look at retention. And David, as he mentioned, we've got different areas that are going to be submitting information to give us a better idea about how we can get there. So excited about it. There is some work, as David mentioned, we have to do. If you look at how the institutional rankings come out for national universities, the highest rubric percentage-wise in that rubric is graduation. It's retention. And so those areas are areas we want to focus on if we want to move the needle and go the other direction. So overall, again, the work on recruitment and retention, that's going to continue. We do have a recruitment retreat coming up at the end of the month. We'll send you information out. At that retreat, we will talk about the next 7 years of increases that we think we need to get to 15,000 students by 2030. So we will be talking a little bit more about that as well in that retreat. And I will stop there. And Dr. Tucker, if you want to add something to that, I'll pause out.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. The overview of the retention information is a really good reminder. The listening sessions to develop our academic strategic plan will be starting next week and go through, I believe, through November at this point. So that we ask that you plan to attend those. They're done around sort of colleges and schools just from a scheduling perspective, but it really will be a listening and discussion session. If we all come to the table with nothing to say, we're going to be staring at each other, because I want to hear from the faculty and the staff about what you're seeing. You have longevity with the institution, so your input is going to be critical for us to think about student success. Everything from professional development, advising capacity, technology concerns, you know, the whole gambit of things that all contribute to student success, not just thinking about traditional metrics in retention, but all the elements that go into those metrics ultimately. The College of Business Analytics is, and Analytics, that Dean search is moving forward. We are firming up the search committee and plan to have a dean in place. I would say a permanent dean, but we're all, as my husband says, we're all visitors here. But we'll have that dean in place for July 1 of 2024. I did want to give you just a quick update. The chancellor mentioned the raises, just so you know that the salary increase goes into effect for monthly people this month, and then the pay that goes back to July 1 will come onto paychecks at the end of November. So that way they can go back and do the calculations after they do the salary increase for monthly, which is most of our faculty. And then we're working on finalizing a committee to look at University 101. And again, making those courses more college specific, but with university learning outcomes that across the institution, we've all come to an agreement on, and making sure that our students get a core curriculum, but also trying to build a better sense of community within the context of our colleges and schools. And happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you both for your report. Thank you, David Shirley, for your report as well. We will open the floor up for questions from senators. Okay. We can.
Okay, I will start. So it's very interesting to say we have goals for the enrollment, number of enrollment. I was wondering, Chancellor and Provost, whether you have anything in mind in terms of the number of undergraduate students. I would think 15,000 is the total number, including both undergraduate and the graduates. So I was wondering, do you have any specific goals for undergraduate numbers? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. When we meet at the recruitment retreat at the end of this month, what we're going to unveil is exactly what you're talking about. Every area, Costas is on the call. He'll be talking about the enrollment increases that we hope to see from our graduate student population. Wendell will handle the undergraduate percentage or the count of undergraduate students that we're looking at. Susan Wegman will cover the fully online students that we want to achieve in terms of students taking classes fully online. So we'll have a pretty detailed breakdown. I don't have the numbers in front of me here because there's so much still submitting those numbers to get them ready for the retreat. But we will have a clear breakdown of what we like to see. We'll have benchmarks in terms of, what we are today and what those areas are trying to achieve over the next 7 years.
Okay, so last month, packed inside of all these numbers about increases of students and enrollment goals and retention goals and the faculty raises and then the decompression initiatives was, we're going to sweep all of the DE funds. And there was no explanation of how long, is this permanent? And there's a huge uproar in my college, at least. And there's a lot of people, a lot of programs have grown since Rita Chang's tenure to depend upon these in order to survive. In some cases, they've even expanded, and that actually has something to do with the increased numbers. But now there's like, no, you have to go on a maximum diet. And finally, for people who are more altruistic, in other words, faculty who are not just doing online classes because they want to make more money individually, but because they want to cultivate this program for their own departments, or what they're called schools now, those people lose that initiative to actually participate and contribute to the commons. Is your question connected? No. Okay, so that my question is, what is the actual plan with this DE? Can you please inform us more? And are there other people that are feeling very uneasy about this?
Yeah, great question, and one that we've actually communicated to each of the deans, and I'm going to have our provost talk exactly about what she's already communicated. We're not sweeping any DE funds. That is not what we're doing. You know, the idea in the payback is that we wouldn't have to come back to any area like we have years before to ask for money to cover a $38 million hole that we accumulated back at the budget impasse, which was 2015. So, Dr. Tucker, why don't you and I want to make sure, you know, that information is coming from the provost, because that's communicated to the deans. And my hope is that the deans are able to articulate exactly what it is that we have said. And so I'll have the provost say a few words to that, and we can keep that going there. Dr. Tucker?
Yeah, so for fiscal 24, you're aware for the financial payback that we are relying on primarily salary savings in our distance education fund. So all instructional costs are being paid for on DE. Any out year expenses that were planned for on DE, such as startup costs, etc., are being paid for in fiscal 24 on DE. The deans have sent me their out year commitments that were made on those funds. And then any exception requests have been coming forward to me and then on to the chancellor, and we are working through those now. The plan for fiscal 25 is intentional budgeting. So instead of paying for things with one-time money, looking at salary savings, we are asking that the deans present budgets so that we can look at their revenue needs for that year. So those of you who have worked hard to grow your enrollment, we want to be able to provide you the financial resources to continue doing that, to continue funding the things that you paid for out of DE. So faculty travel, startup costs, graduate student travel, some of your programs like History Day, all those need to be in a fiscal 25 budget so we can look at where our enrollment growth has occurred, how can we incentivize further enrollment growth. Initiatives that support our strategic plan is what will be resourced for fiscal 25. So it is really going from sort of a one-time budget model, you don't know what you have, sometimes till a year later, to intentionally budgeting upfront, just like you would do in your household. What are your resource needs, and knowing going into the fiscal year the funds that you have to do that. So they're not being swept. We are just, you can call it a renaming. It's just, we're going to do intentional budgeting like you would do it at most institutions of higher education.
Yeah, and if you look at, there's dollars that are already being spent by deans that are coming from DE funds. So they're actually spending money right now. That's not money that we have. We haven't, like I mentioned, we haven't swept anything. The idea is Dr. Tucker is saying is going forward on some of those one-time purchases or those items that are out there. She's working with the deans to look and see, you know, what is needed, right? What does need to be covered? That's going to be critical going forward. You know, no offense to previous administrations, but the setup of the model of DE is just not sustainable because you've got some unpredictability in state appropriations and tuition revenue. And when you look at 5 years of enrollment decline, which was 2015 to 2020, and a $38 million hole, it's a little hard to promise something, right? Because you're constantly trying to figure out how to patch some holes up. Add on top of that, the demand to make sure we have raises covered, which we mentioned earlier. It's almost a question of which one do you want? Because I know people went without several years of raises here. And the idea was, at least 3 years ago, was that we had to change that. And so in doing so, as we're saying now, we've just got to be very intentional about the dollars we have. We've got to make sure that they're allocated in the appropriate places. And we got to keep growing, and we got to keep making sure the state appropriation is where it is today, hopefully that way tomorrow as well. So hopefully that answers some of those questions, but I want to say again, you know, that information has been communicated to the deans. We expect the deans to communicate that information as we're saying now, because as you mentioned earlier, I think there's been some myths out there about sweeping or that is not occurring. So if we need to get that message out again, Dr. Tucker, or if there's a way to share what we've sent to the deans, as you guys know, I don't mind at all us being transparent and doing that, because we need to make sure we're on the same page as we go through this this year. Again, the bulk of that is through personnel savings. It's not through sweeping DE funds.
Just a clarification, right? It's okay, Dr. Lee?
Okay, okay.
We'll come back to you in a second.
Okay,
Go ahead, Dr.
Well, Chancellor, my question is about the enrollment, resources, and also reputation and support for faculty. In a way, it is related to institutional ranking and education quality. We fully understand and support the importance of enrollment, such as retention, graduation rate. In fact, that's, faculty-driven initiative, and almost, 50% is related to students' retention, graduation rate. And in fact, most of our faculty senator involved in our group 1. And as you can see, every faculty senator received the handouts. And there's no doubt we support student success, include the retention, improvement, and graduation rate, because that helps us to bring revenue. There's no doubt. And also the third area related to the faculty compensation. And we understand that, yes, it's good that, okay, this year enrollment increased and give a raise to faculty and staff 2%, which is wonderful. Now, my question is about competition for resources. Think about, yes, okay, this year our ranking is 2A, and previous year is 263. Obviously, we have a group 2 who focus on peer assessment, that means the reputation, peer surveys. We need to allocate some resources for national marketing. And we met with both the chief information, chief communication officer, and also chief of the police officer. And we, need to think about allocate resources, not just, group 1, I mean, student success, this area, absolutely we need resources. But also faculty compensation area, we need to allocate resources. And then the second area, and marketing, reputation, peer assessment, we need resources. Again, my question for you, how do you deal with the competition of resources?
That's actually a pretty easy question. And let me share with you really what you were citing just now. What Dr. Lee was talking about was, can you guys see my screen there?
Yes.
And what Dr. Lee is talking about is how U.S. News and World, how they rank national universities. And the beauty of this is we can see how they rank them. Here's the rubric. And you were just citing our graduation rates, which is why we had David Shirley come on just a moment ago to talk about how important it is that we look at this retention in the data, and we look at the predictive analytics that tell us what groups may need a little more help than others. We know what that is. We talked about that at the retreat. The peer assessment piece, Dr. Lee, that you're alluding to, it's 20%. That's a big piece. I'm pleased to report that myself, Dr. Satsoulis, Jeff Harmon, we are spending the resources now to make sure the information from the research and things that are happening here at SIU Carbondale get out to those other doctoral peer research universities where I complete the same peer assessment of their institution. I get a box in my email of all of these peer assessments that I have to do on other institutions. They send them to presidents and chancellors. And they basically are sending me throughout the year institutions that are like ours, marketing information about their programs. We're going to do the same thing. That's what we've been talking about now. And Dr. Satsoulis may have some information of how he's working with Jeff on that. But at any rate, this is what we're studying. And so it's back to the conversation that Dr. Tucker just mentioned a moment ago. That's why it's so important to align our priorities, or our budget to our priorities, right? It's the top 5 priorities that we're talking about. Student success and engagement. Heard a lot of talk about that. Academic innovation and research, diversity, equity, inclusion, branding, marketing, sustainability. All of those things, it's important for us to align because the funds are going to go towards those initiatives. So glad you brought that up, but just hopefully you feel good in knowing that we're on top of that. It's something that we know exactly what we need to do. And the beauty of it is it doesn't have to come out of the academic departments. It doesn't have to come out of your budget. This is information that we're taking out of our UConn budget, right? We're taking this out of, nothing to do with the academic affairs area. And we're not asking for Dr. Tucker to come up with millions of dollars to do some marketing and research. We're doing that at a higher level. Costas, you trying to get in there?
Yes, since you mentioned that, I just had a meeting with UConn, and we are scheduling a research magazine that will go out. We're working on setting it up, and we're also discussing whether it's going to be just electronic or also hard copy, and that's something we're discussing. And we're going to highlight the accomplishments of our researchers, both at the graduate level and some undergraduate research as well. So this is underway.
Yeah, that's information we will strategically share with folks that we know are doing the peer assessment. As I mentioned, that's 20% of the rubric. That's a pretty high percent. Matter of fact, it's the highest out of all the percentages in there. It's the highest.
It was just a clarification. So the word sweeping is bad. What's going on is the DE assets are being counted as assets in the department already that should be counted as part of creating a budget.
Yes, I believe what you're describing aligns with what we are thinking. That those assets will be rebudgeted within the college units. And so we can make strategic investments to align with Imagine 2030.
Provost Tucker, just to follow up to that, in the past, funds were distributed to units based on things like number of majors, we only count first majors, things like credit hour production. One concern is that DE money might be redistributed with those things in mind as well, or is it just going to be about the vision and mission, or will those considerations also come into play?
Yes, so in developing a budget for fiscal 25, certainly student credit hours, enrollment, first majors, dual majors, interdisciplinary work will all be taken into consideration, because where we've had enrollment growth, we need to have resources there. Where we have the potential for enrollment growth, we need to be investing there. So we'll be looking at all of that across the colleges. But most importantly is the faculty in the schools that are lifting up those needs to their dean. We want to see initiatives that do align with that strategic plan. We're looking for expanding things that you're doing successfully around retention or new ideas around those strategic initiatives. So all that will be part of looking at a fiscal 25 budget.
And if you look, unfortunately, some of our schools did not grow. Actually, some lost enrollment. And so when you lose enrollment, right, you don't have the same DE allocation that maybe you thought you had from one year to the next. I mean, it cuts into your bottom line. That's why I was saying earlier, it's a little hard to sustain on that model unless you're growing, because it's almost like grant funds, if you will. You know, it's soft money. It's if you don't have the funds to be able to cover what you have, you know, promised every year, then that pot is just not, it's not quite what it was or what it used to be. So, you know, that's why we don't fund, you know, each of our colleges based on semester credit hour or enrollment. I mean, if we did, then we would actually be pulling money back from certain colleges saying that you didn't make your enrollment number, right? So we don't have that model here. But I've worked at places that actually have that model, where if you're not hitting those enrollment targets and generating the tuition revenue, then you actually have to give up dollars. You know, we don't have that going here.
We'll go Gary and then Khalid.
Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
So I guess my comments, I've been here for 25 years and I've seen the decline from our 22,000 student number to where we stand today. And I guess I see SIU as having a bimodal population of students where we do excellent support for those who are of the very highest caliber. Not to brag, but the face on the back of this library is my daughter. She's the face of science and has been there for 3 years since she graduated here. So I understand the support for that level of intellect and that approach. I also see that we've got a host of opportunities and support mechanisms for those students that fall on the other end of that modal distribution. I guess what I'd like to look at looking into the future. I remember when Dr. Dietz left here as an associate provost, went to become the president of Illinois State. The first thing he did was raise the entrance requirements for that university. And concomitantly over time, they've tended to, the students who are going to be successful gravitate to that. And I wonder if that's going to be part of the matrix of your look at how to increase and improve kind of the educational retention and recruitment efforts for SIU.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that we put in those bullets that you see, I think it's number 11. We had an increase in 9.8% of new students with a high school GPA of at least 3.5. So David will tell you as he looks at the data, we're still attracting a very high caliber, high quality student. You know, that's just like most of the state universities are doing. Our challenge, just like other challenges across the state, is how do you retain those students? The student you mentioned, and hats off to your daughter, and actually for Larry's a good friend. He's done a great job there at Illinois State. You know, what we're finding is that if we don't have the right support tools around those students, or if the funding is not there for them to get from one semester to the next, it doesn't really matter what GPA you have if you don't have the money to get there. So we've been able to do a better job in allocating scholarships to students at all levels. We'll continue to do that. It's one of the reasons why we're able to keep a lot of students in this region home. I think we're up 7.2% of students from the region that have stayed here. So we're still getting, I consider to be some of the best and brightest that are coming to the university. Our work, as you saw in the data, we've got to focus on those predictive analytics. So we know the students that may come to us that are at that 275 mark or slightly below are going to need the most support. So I couldn't see who was speaking there, but you're right on target to what we've been talking about. So I appreciate those comments, but that's exactly what we've been focused on, is the classes that we attract and the kind of support we put around them going forward.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hermanson?
Oh, yeah,
Go
okay.
ahead.
I just want to mention one thing and then I will go back to my question actually. If you look at the state of Illinois where the state really failed in, and I'm thinking of, I'm talking about K-12 education, giving more money to some of the schools that actually did very, very well versus other schools that were struggling, just created a huge gap where we have schools that are struggling and they're getting less money, so they have to struggle more and they're not going to make it. So we have to recognize that within SIU, we will have schools that will actually have, you know, an increase in enrollment and some that will need some time to reach their goals. And that's why I would really prefer if we have, you know, instead of a yearly attributions, you know, thinking about 3 years for most of the school, that will give them time, you know, to catch up, see what they have to change, what courses they will have probably to offer, and how they can do better, you know, in recruiting. That's number one. Number two, some of the schools are going to be doing much, much better when it comes to research and graduate enrollment. So how are you going to reward those schools that do better in, you know, enrolling more grad students, more PhD students, publishing more manuscripts, you know, attracting more money to SIU? So that's something I would like to see, because we talk a lot about enrollment, undergraduate enrollment. We tend to forget that this is SIU Carbondale and we are also a research institution. And I would like to see a plan also for research. How are we, you know, going to increase research within SIU? So what are we doing? The projections for 2030 also for research.
Yeah, what beauty is we never forget we're a research university. Unfortunately, the folks that I'm getting ready to pass the mic to just got here. I want to remind everyone, we were without a vice chancellor for research and dean of the graduate school for a number of years. We were without an IE, institutional research effectiveness person, and provost has just arrived. So I'm very confident in the team we have in place today in terms of making sure that is a key focus. That's all we talk about at cabinet. So let me start with Costas. If you give some remarks there, and Cheryl, I think you're trying to get in there too.
Thank you. In my presentation, you know, in my presentation, I don't know if you wanted to share it with you now or not. We are making a lot of changes and we introducing a lot of new programs to help our research. Just FYI, last year, our research awards were close to $96 million, which is a 90% increase over 2019, 5 years ago. And as far as my records go, it was the largest ever. The same thing with expenditures. 67 of these million came from SIU Carbondale, and the rest, about 29 or so, came from Springfield. So I think there is a momentum, and I will share with you the R1 exploratory committee, the research discovery workshop that we're organizing, the proposal development funds we're putting together. You're all familiar with the fact that we send 50 of our faculty to conferences, 94 of our students to conferences, in addition to spending, I would say we haven't spent all of it, it's been encumbered, but over $1 million in facilities and equipment. So there is a recognition that our research enterprise needs support, our research faculty needs support, and beyond support, we need to grow the number of faculty who are engaged in research, and we need to grow especially not so much the number as the size of our grants. You know, I would rather have $1 million grant than 10 $10,000 grants. So we are cognizant of that, and we're working very hard, and you will see some of the details in my presentation as well.
And I will say, some of you are aware of my background with 15 plus years on the graduate education side and several years in the research administration side. So Costas and I are partners in this, that we do work closely together. And I'll give you a great example of how we're already investing in the space of graduate students, graduate programs, and research. I had a dean come to me that's had tremendous growth and enrollment in their graduate program and needs additional faculty. And so I already said, I will give you an additional faculty, search for it this year so they can be here next year. And that dean has matched that faculty. So he's reallocated within his own college And between the two of us, we will have 2 additional research faculty hired in that area. So these are the ways we can be very strategic to support our research initiatives, our graduate programs, by working collaboratively. And we'll look to Costas, I'm sure, to help with the startup for those faculty as well.
Yeah, I'll give hats off to Scott Collins. Scott leads our graduate group, and we don't operate in a vacuum here. That information would typically go every month, isn't Scott? I think we meet every month, if I'm not mistaken, but it's with his group to really talk about keeping that at the forefront. So it's not something we're just answering very quickly now, but there's some real work that's going on in that area.
Let me also say one more thing. Yesterday, I told the deans what their startup funds from my office will be. So they are aware of that and they can move forward. But also, you may remember the TAA funds that run to the graduate school to support TAs teaching in core courses. Until this year, these funds were given to the deans around March and April. This year, we gave it to them end of September, beginning of October. So this is a big change. So they can now actually recruit some of the great graduate students who are applying early on in the semester instead of waiting until the end of the year when it's very hard to get new graduate students. So I realize these are small changes, but they're possible changes to happen very quickly. And I think they're going to have a significant impact on what we do.
Thank you very much.
Maybe you need to tell the deans to share the information with the faculty, because we hear more directly from you than from our deans.
That is
Well,
true.
I kind of picked that up. That's what I was saying about 15 minutes ago. So right, Dr. Tucker, we're going to make that change.
Though, I do check in with our deans and they do share communications and not everyone reads them. I mean, they communicate at different intervals, but it is a topic that we have been discussing since I've gotten here, making sure they're communicating effectively with faculty. And we know it can get lost in inboxes as well.
Well, our hope is that if you're hearing this for the first time, that's a problem. And that's kind of what I'm listening for, and hoping that really what we say should just be a regurgitation of what's already been said.
We would like that as well. With that, we need to move on with our meeting schedule. Thank you, Chancellor Lane, Provost
Thank you,
Tucker,
guys.
ECR Satsoulis, and David Shirley for answering our questions and for being here today.
Thank you. And we did, President Rader, we had I think it was Rachel. I don't know if she's in there, but yeah, Rachel. Yeah, just a perfect example. There's questions after the meeting. Rachel gave us a really good question. Hopefully we answered it, Rachel. Now that I'm going to be embarrassed here, but I think Dr. Tucker weighed in on it as well, but we will respond if you want to send an email to question you didn't get to ask. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. We appreciate that. All right, moving on with our schedule to the report section. Up first is myself. The only thing I want to report from our executive committee meeting that is not already going to be shared here is we had a brief discussion about whether or not to continue on with the YouTube for Senate meetings. That was initially started during COVID, when that was the only way to satisfy the Open Meetings Act, the Illinois Open Meetings Act. And so I'm currently looking into that act to see if that is something we need to continue. We don't have a lot of viewership for the YouTube, so that's something that I'm hoping to come to you with a little bit more information next month. And that is my report. Moving on to Elections Committee.
So we're in process of elections, and I don't have anything finalized to report today, which I was hoping that would be the case. On another note, I also represented the Faculty Senate at the grad council meeting, which was last week. So, and I prepared a written report this time around, so I can give that to Josh for the record, so everyone can get an idea of what kinds of things we shared from our previous meeting.
That'd be great, thank you. Any questions for Elaine? All right, we'll move on to the Undergraduate Educational Policy Committee, which I believe Dr. Apgar will be.
Yeah, the new guy gets to do this. Yeah, so it appears as if these four RMEs have been in process since about 2018. So that's when the initial one came through, and that was also problematic due to faculty hire and all kinds of other issues, I guess, at the college level. And so there are four specific ones. One's to remove a Bachelor of Science degree, and the other three are to set up a new BS degree in cannabis production and a minor as well as a certificate. And those are the four that passed through the committee after slight discussion. It looked like everything was pretty clear. Open that up to any discussion with the faculty.
So for these four RMEs, was there clear faculty support?
Yes, it was unanimous for each.
Thank you.
Yes.
My question about the process, so usually we have resolutions, so from undergraduate EPC. Have you guys had any, resolution to present to the faculty senate?
We resolved that we accept all four of these RMEs as written. That's the resolution.
Why? I mean, can you justify why do you, again, maybe you do it right, but then we want to be due diligent.
Certainly.
And part of the job of UEPC, they examine each proposal, they agree, disagree, especially highlights why they agree. Especially, I mean, for some of them, maybe controversial, maybe we invite people to talk to us. So rather than we just present everything without the due diligence, that's my.
Did you have to do with any of the RMAs?
Really, let me do a quick clarification. So a resolution, so we usually will have a paper resolution that will pass, that will be signed and will give to the APAA. However, a resolution is just a written form of a motion, so we can still motion for approval of these RVs. However, we will still need that resolutions to sign to give to the APAA. So
I don't share the UEPC.
That's
so
fair,
this is my
yeah.
second faculty senate meeting since probably 2017, maybe. And so my apologies for not recognizing what the standard expectations were.
No
I was told by Jeffrey to just come in and talk about the RMEs. We had unanimous consent on all four of them, and I kind of thought that would be standard. And I can bring that to his attention so that we can get the appropriate paperwork signed and brought in.
that's
But I
right.
think his idea was let's get this thing cleared off the books, and he was unable to attend today.
Okay, that was just not an accusation, I was just
No, no.
clarifying the truth. Yeah, so usually there is a presentation of, so what we want to know is whether or not the faculty voted for the RMEs. Was there any dissension? If so, what it was there any controversy either with the RMEs or with the committee? And then are there any other impacts that would be negative, like financial impacts?
No, the financial impacts were absolutely no, there's no indication that there'd be any problem. We have a new faculty member who's going to undertake this, who actually has his bachelor or his PhD from Virginia Tech, specifically in cannabis production. So he fits very well in the horticultural area. And so they look, as the committee discussed that financial impact and what that would cause, that it appears as if the only impact would be an increase in interest and an increase in potential student credit hour generation of the program, which is well needed.
Yes.
I'm also on that, just legal from the School of Education, and I'm also on that committee. It's not clear to me what we are to present here, and when I was in with the grad council, and I actually crafted a few resolutions, whereas this and this and that, and then let it be resolved, and then with that kind of language, I have a few drafts. I still have my drive, and are we supposed to present that kind of resolution here?
Yes, generally, the motion is presented as a resolution that has a standard whereas, and then a therefore, we approve or disapprove or whatever your language is there. So that's generally what is presented to.
Yeah, we did that at the grad council meeting with all these RMEs actually.
Yeah.
So we need something like that. I'll send an email to Jeff, maybe copy on that. We'll see what we can do.
And just in the interest of getting these things passed, because they need to be passed, we will do a verbal motion today, which again, a resolution is just a written motion, so we can vote on that today, and then you can send me those resolutions to sign. To head on over to the APA. Is that a reasonable solution? Okay. All right, are there any other questions about the armies?
A general question about armies, is there any place that actually outlines this process? Because I'm new. And somebody rushed into my office yesterday and said, we were approved by someone higher up in the admin to do something that had been hanging for years, a name change of the school. And she rushed into my office and said, can you get this changed? I said, the meeting's tomorrow. I don't think so. I don't know what the process is, but she said that the only thing that would hang up this name change now, it's like super low intensity RMEs. The only thing that hangs it up now is apparently approval in this body. So is there anything to be done?
So anything that comes in RME form needs to come through the UEPC, and that needs to come from the APA's office. So there is information online. If you go to the, I believe it's the APA's website about the process for RME and for Form 90, which is catalog changes. But I would encourage you to get in touch with Julianne Wallace. So
they were supposed to send it to here and they didn't do so, and so therefore.
Is it Dunstan?
Oh, is it?
Julie Dunstan.
Oh, sorry, Julie Dunstan.
Yeah, Julie Dunstan's an
Okay.
AP.
At least I can explain. the
AP.
APAP. Yeah, she's APAP.
So do we need a
So it
motion?
goes to that office and
Yeah.
then she sends it to Bethany, and Bethany sends it to.
Everybody sort of CC them. And I have not received anything in regards to this. But let's go back to our.
Sorry, thank you.
Oh, no worries.
Nothing else.
Let's go back to our RMEs. Are there any other question about the 4 RMEs? Okay. Then would you like to group them together as to?
Yeah, I think it'd be easier to do that, so.
Okay. So then I would like to motion to approve the 4 RMEs. Second. Okay. That, we'll begin voting. All in favor, raise your hands. You may lower your hands. All opposed? Right, any abstentions? Thank you. Those RMEs, that motion passes. Just make sure to get those RMEs over to myself
Thank you.
or to Josh, but CC both of us. Are there any other questions? For you, easy. Thank you. Yeah. Moving on to our budget committee.
Very short, report. We met as a committee, the budget committee met. We are going to do a little bit of research on school directors, what numbers are working 10, 11, 12 months, and why, what they're doing, what's the workload in the summer. But that's a low priority, but we'll do that research. And then we're going to use last year's data on salary compression to do a little bit of a gender equity analysis. And if we find problems there, we'll request new data and do it again with the new data. And no updates on the salary compression. I was going to ask the chancellor if they've gotten a consultant firm yet, but I forgot to ask about that. So, so we don't have it yet. So that's all we have. Thank you. Any questions for Regent? Yes.
So with regard to the memo I sent to you, where are you now in terms of the?
We're just gonna I'm gonna assign everybody in the budget committee colleges to find out.
Are you going to do some study with other peer institution in terms of their?
Oh, the peer study, that's a separate
No,
thing.
not peer, in terms of pay school director or chairs, we may need to, I think, I talked to Mike last year, they planned, again, they didn't. Do you guys, were you guys talk with? In other words, are you guys to examine how the pay structure in other universities elsewhere?
No, we're not saying that as a high priority right now. We feel there's a sense that what school directors are doing in the summer justifies their pay in the summer. We're gonna do internal research on that. We'll find out the numbers of school directors that are 10, 11, 12, and interview some of them regarding what they're doing in the summer. And we'll report that to you all. And if we see an issue to go forward with it, then we will. But at this point, we have no plans to do a comparative. So
Then what's the function of budget committee if they cannot do the comparison between our chair director here with chair and director elsewhere?
So I want to remind senators that we want to keep this constructive. So please, you don't use as much negative language. And I also want to remind senators that it is up. Committees are a faculty driven process. And so what the committees do is up to the faculties of the committee.
So we want to do that research for you because you made a request for it in 2022. And so we'll report that internal research and then we can take it from there as a Senate body.
Thank you.
All senators are welcome to talk to the committees and suggest items of business for those committees. Any other questions? Let's move on to committee on committees.
All right, so we had some openings in some of the committees. We needed 2 non-faculty Senate members for the UEPC committee. We needed 2 non-faculty Senate members for the faculty welfare status and welfare committee. We also needed 2 members for the SIU Press Editorial Advisory Board. Josh and Sherry put out a call for volunteers. We received the volunteers and then the COC voted and we have some recommendations that I'll let you know about here. The UEPC committee, for that, we recommend Brandon Hirsch and Joshua Daniel. For the SFW, we recommend Sandy Watts and Ravi Karan. And for the Press Editorial Advisory Committee, we recommend Theodore Cohen and Emily Carr. And I'd like to call for a motion to accept all of these members to their respective boards. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, you got a motion?
I second.
All right, everybody understand what's happening? No, we're a little bit fast. So we remember it's going on to our committees and we are voting to approve those assignments. All in favor? Raise your hand. Lower your hands. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you. The motion passes.
All right, there's no further business that I'm aware of.
Yeah, we're good. Thank you. All right, thank you very much. All right, moving on to the faculty status and welfare committee.
Okay, thank you. We have a few items to report to the faculty senator. First of all, in EOC Emergency Operating Center, we met twice. We talked about the COVID-19 and vaccine situation, and in fact, all the announcement was sent out. And that's the one item. And also the faculty status welfare committee co-chairs met with the co-chair of governance committee about 2 weeks ago. We talked about the amendment of faculty senator opening table as well as the involvement of the new open table of academic units. And then faculty status welfare committee members met last week. We voted and we support both the amendment of the faculty senate opening paper as well as get involvement of in the opening paper of academic different units. So Jennifer, would you like to add something?
The only other thing we talked about was the emeritus status. We felt that there should be some sort of checklist or application to make sure that the faculty meet certain criteria in order to stay current with research and teaching. To make the offer. to be an emeritus.
Thank you. I think we are going to work on a resolution. We plan to work with our faculty staff welfare committee, get their support. They will present to the faculty senate with regard to professor, associate professor emeritus.
I have a question. Oh, sorry. You go first.
Go ahead.
So what do you do with NTTs? What do we do with NTTs?
Well, very good question. Maybe something we need to have a discussion between.
For sure.
I think we should implement NDT.
I think you should. Too.
Yes, NDT, the number of people. Thank you. We never saw that. Yeah.
One thing to bear in mind is that the operating papers are they are technically part of the CBA because they include my reference. Whatever the governance committee and your committee does with those, it's going to have to work with the faculty association.
Excellent point. In fact, this point was raised last week in the same room here.
Okay, good. Just as long as somebody raises the point.
Yes.
Yeah.
And faculty association president Chief Pansky was here. And in fact, the faculty association pretty much not involved. They, as long as they are consistent with collective bargaining agreement, and they even do not look at it.
Well, they're included by reference in the CBA. But the thing about it is that insofar as the administration has the power to approve or not approve, and so it goes up the chain, through the dean and into the provost office. Insofar as they have the authority to approve or not approve, it is grievable by the faculty association. And since it's grievable, one of the things that's probably a very good idea is to make sure that the faculty association has copies of all of these, and that even if it is not a formal process with the faculty association, they are most definitely involved. And the reason is it's their responsibility to be with a dean or chancellor demands certain kinds of changes.
Very good question. Let me clarify this for you. Okay. Once academic, let's say academic opening paper is approved, not one is okay. They have to be approved by the faculty member in the school, then approved by the dean of that college, and then sent to the provost office. Then the provost office sent to the collective bargaining agreement, that means faculty association. And after that, the meeting, the agreement which we had with the provost office, Mark Morrison, and after the faculty association sent, then they sent to the faculty senator as part of advisement process.
Yeah, so you're talking about the formal process. What I'm talking about is communication. The reason the communication, so as long as it's consistent with the collective bargaining agreement, that is going to be determined by the faculty association, not by the Senate. And that's why it needs to go to them.
Yes,
it's not a formal process, but the thing is that the faculty association, and I'm one of the people who does that, looks at it because I'm one of the people who wrote the CBA. We look at it and make sure that it's consistent. It isn't just academic, it's terms and conditions of employment. And so we really have to be involved in the faculty association up. Actually, what we're doing is heading off problems that happen at the dean level or at the provost level or at the chancellor level. So, I mean, the point is collaboration all the way through is the wisest course, because the faculty senate would not necessarily be in a good position to determine what's consistent with the CBA, the faculty association.
I think that's a different conversation. I think the function of faculty association, faculty senate are different. Because
it's a little bit nebulous.
Well,
faculty senate, academic, terms and conditions of employment, faculty association. Those overlap inevitably, especially with things like tenure processes.
Yes, I think it's we were similar in terms of faculty status welfare, because that's part of the faculty senators function as well as the faculty association.
Nobody's denying that.
Right, that's no doubt. That's why we only get the open table after faculty association approved. And then they send us. We're not going to.
Okay,
That's-
well, as long as it works that way, so test against the CBA, then it goes to,
Exactly.
that's fine.
Thank you.
Can I ask Randy a question? At FSEC last week, Jeff made it quite clear that the FA was not involved in the OP process.
Not in
unless-
creating it, no.
Yeah, unless there's a dispute.
Yeah.
So are you saying as we write them, you want to see our drafts
I
before?
think communication is wise.
So you would recommend that to units that are working? on
Just
it?
anyone who's
Yeah.
working on an operating paper probably, ought to contact our committee. I'm on that committee.
Okay.
That essentially tests things against the CBA. It can just save a whole lot of trouble on down the line. So, and it's not that much trouble, actually. You read over it. I mean, people who really study the CDA, you read over it, it takes about 5 minutes to determine whether there's an issue. And if there is an issue, it's easy to resolve in the creation of the papers.
Thank you.
So, yeah, that's all I'm talking.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you. Very important. We're on the same page.
Okay, good.
And thank you for that clarification. Very useful.
Yeah, I don't think Jeff is on that committee, so I'm not sure he would even necessarily know how we've done that.
I think it was a slightly different question. I mean, I think there was a nuance to what was said in DC. So this goes beyond that, and to me, it all
Mhm.
tracks.
It should, but you guys may not, Jeff may not even know about, he's still relatively new at this. He may not know about the existence of this committee that just checks against the collective bargaining agreement of old people.
Somebody on Zoom to
Mute.
mute.
Anyway.
Yeah, Chris Weinke. Mute yourself, that would be useful. So weird. So I'm gonna move on and unless anybody has anything pressing. Okay. Thank you very much for that discussion. It was very useful.
Thank you.
So moving on to governance committee, I believe, Khalid might have. No, you're still here. Fantastic. Do you have
I'm
any?
still here. I'm still here.
Yeah, great. Do you have anything to report?
Yes. Well, two things. It seems like we're going to have to go back to the same discussions that we had before. So first, the amendment to the operating paper for the faculty senate. My suggestion, instead of having one committee actually, working on those amendments, is having a chair from every committee, being involved there. This way we can work out the different things that has to be amended one time and then go with the new operating paper for our faculty senate first. So this way we know, sometimes we don't even know if we have the right to do something or we don't have the right to do something. At least everybody will know what are our limitations and what we are supposed to do and how we can operate. It's going to provide us with a good self-education tool, to understand who we are and what are, our, I would say, limitations and what are we supposed to do. Therefore, I would like to throw a motion actually to have a chair of every committee serving in this committee that will actually amend our operating paper. I'm talking about the faculty senate operating papers.
Who are motioning to create an ad hoc committee.
Yes. And I'm
Created-
suggesting that in this committee that we have at least one of the committee chairs from the standing committees that we have in the faculty senate. Or if the chair is busy, he can actually name his co-chair to serve, or somebody from that committee need to serve in this ad hoc committee.
Motion on the floor.
May we have a discussion?
Once it's seconded.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. You may now discuss. Go ahead.
Okay. I think before we have a motion, before I have a second, please read, I think, can any of you show the faculty senate operating paper online there? It's very clear that So, I mean, each standing committee, the governance committee, as well as the faculty status committee can modify the open paper if you say amendment with the support from the general faculty member and faculty senate. So if we go to the faculty senate open paper amendment process, we do not need to create another ad hoc committee. Otherwise, it's inconsistent with faculty senate open paper. So Josh or any of you, can you open the faculty senate open paper amendment process?
Michael, are you on the scene? No, I'm sorry. Anybody on Zoom, you could quickly
Just
bring up the operating paper?
Dr. Lee, while we're opening the operating paper, what I mean with this ad hoc committee, actually, I understand that your committee and my committee are the one that need to be involved in this, but it's not going to hurt to have the input of the other committees, especially in things that concern, the other committees.
So. Yeah, I don't know. Dr. Lee, can you show us?
Yeah.
Oh, there it is, there it is.
Oh, amendment process, there you go. A minute to read it really fast.
Your eyes must be better than mine.
Yeah.
I can't read it from here.
An amendment to this document shall require the approval of the majority of the members of the faculty senate and the approval of a majority of those faculty voting in a special referendum on the proposed amendment. Amendments may be submitted only during regular meetings of the FS, and the Senate shall not vote on a proposed amendment until at least one regular meeting after the meeting at which the amendment was submitted. Approval by the Chancellor of SIUC is designated as necessary for the final approval of amendments to the operating paper of the faculty and the faculty senate.
Can I respond to Dr. Khalid Maxon's comments? In fact, if the area related to faculty status welfare committee, I think our committee can take on. And we did it, in fact, 2 years ago, co-chair Scott Comparoto, as well as Jennifer Sherry, we did it through the process pretty well. We can follow the same process. It takes time.
I would really, to be honest with you, I'm a guy who's very inclusive. I like to include, everybody in this because it concerns everybody. I can see something with my vision, but there are different visions. And I would like to have, different members from all the committees contributing. This way we can maybe create something that would serve, better. I'm sure in a few years, other people will think that this is absolute and they will have to do other amendments. But for today, we do have, different committees, and I would like to include them in this amendment that we're going to be working on.
So,
Holly, what are the things that we know need to be changed about the operating papers? Do they affect all the committees? Does every committee need to look at what's said about them?
Well, some of the committees, I give you a simple example, okay? Some of the committees will spend more time working, on issues related to the faculty senate than other committees. So how are they going to be, are they going to have course releases? Are they going to, have increases in when they are negotiating their assignments with their deans, for that semester, for that year, to have some time, to commit to that work? So we're not talking here, monetary compensations, for example, for the faculty that serve on the Senate. We're talking about how can we provide them with the time, for example, that they can do their duties to the best.
one more comment?
Okay. I think any senator can have a resolution, have a motion for anything, but we need to follow the process. I think for amendment, the process is very clear. If you want to create, let's say, ad hoc committee, and maybe your governance committee will present a formal resolution to justify it.
The only reason why I would like an ad hoc committee is to have actually the input of everybody before that we can, put this on the floor and share it with everyone. This way we come up with a better idea, with a better, proposal to share. Now, if this is not, if you want us, to bring it directly, we can just work on it and bring it directly. I always like to have the input of everybody.
So, really quickly, because we're slowly running out of time for this committee. So you are correct, any person in Senate can make a motion. A motion has been made. So we can move to vote, or we can move to postpone. If you would like to take more time to gather information before we have this vote, we can do so at the next meeting.
For the sake of time, I will just postpone it to the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to move to postpone the motion. Seconded. We need a quick vote. All in favor, raise your hand. Email your hands. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you for bringing this up. I look forward to more information next week.
Okay. The second thing that I would like to report about today is the operating paper for the schools. As you have seen from the email that was sent, there are many schools that are still working on their operating paper. And there was the question whether we should be involved or not. So last week, we heard something different from our colleague, Penske, and today we hear something different. I've requested actually last week if the provost could share with us, the process by which the university think the operating paper should be handled. Once we know the process, then we will know if we should be involved or we should not be involved. But until that time, I think it's going to be a waste of time to keep discussing who should be doing what. I really would like to see an official thing coming from the provost office or whoever is going to be responsible to tell us, who is going to be involved in the OP, who should be, involved in revising or dictating or helping or doing whatever, in these OPs.
Briefly, I want to mention that I will be talking with the chancellor about this on Thursday. So
Thank
whatever I learn, I will share with the Senate.
Thanks.
A little history on that, Khalid, is that this has been a constant point of vagueness in the bargaining process for the last 20 years as to who really has the authority to prescribe this process. Some of the process is in the collective bargaining agreement, but that's really kind of a minimum process. It's not enough to get the thing going. And there's a dispute that comes up in every bargaining experience, let's call it, that we have about how much authority the various levels, the chancellor, the provost, the dean, has to send back a submitted operating paper. And this time we have, in preparing for bargaining, this time we have a complication in the sense that we have departments that have been formed into schools, and departments want past practice to have a status that, in fact, under the Montemagno plan, which we all suffer, is so. He tried to take back all of that to put it in extremely plain language, and such that the provost's office would have the authority to prescribe the whole process of the creation of the new collective bargaining agreements. I have no doubt that had that administration survived into a serious bargaining process, which it didn't, that there would have been a terrible fight over this. Now, since there isn't a terrible fight over it, what we have is a situation where everything is vague. And the provost doesn't have that kind of authority to prescribe an operating paper creation process. In a way, we could say that's an opportunity. And since it is vague right at the moment, we have an opportunity, I think, both Faculty Senate, Faculty Association, and working with our administration to create a new process for the creation of operating papers. And these operating papers, instead of becoming continual points of contention between upper administration and faculty, same for the NTT, same for the graduate students, this is an opportunity for us to really get the operating papers right. And such that it doesn't become a point of contention over and over, grievance after grievance after grievance. If we can cooperate with the upper administration, Faculty Senate, Faculty Association in the creation of these operating papers for the schools, we could avoid so much grief in the next 10 to 20 years. And so for this reason, I actually support what Khalid was suggesting. This body needs to have as much input as possible, but we also need to understand that since it's vague, we have an opportunity. Let's talk to the upper administration, let's talk to our deans, let's talk to our colleagues and see if we can't get better operating papers instead of legalistic things that become points of contention. However, I would have to say that the collective bargaining agreement has to be the bottom line, because that's the existing formal document that prescribes certain things. So that's the comment.
Can you be very brief because we've gone way over time?
Sorry.
To my point, I agree with him.
Yes.
And also I agree with Khalid. If we are going to have ad hoc committee to be created to examine the open paper of different units, that would be wonderful, because this is parallel to the new school structure which we had 4 years ago. Many of you may not hear. That's why Faculty Senate get involved with the new school creation. After the Faculty Association approved, then Faculty Senate involved. I agree with them.
But it never happened because that administration passed out of existence before the serious bargaining occurred.
Yes.
And then when our new chancellor arrived, he just wanted to get the contract. And so we got a short contract, as we know. And so the serious work is yet to be done.
Yes.
And it's not going to be easy because there have to be 1,000 negotiations in every school that was formed out of the departments. And then between the school and the dean, and then between the deans, you know how it works.
Thank you.
Nothing good is ever easy.
Yeah.
All right, is there anything else from the governance committee?
That's the only thing I'm aware of. So that's probably enough for today.
All right, so let us move on to our advisory council to the IBHE. Li Chen?
Okay, that will be brief. The council had a meeting on September 15th at the Illinois Valley College at Oak Gillespie. Since last report I had. Because this is the first meeting of the academic year, and the members are trying to figure out the agenda, what they can do in the. However, we do have two presentations. One is from the host institution about like librarians, two of the librarians, Greece and Jenna. They were talking about the one book, one college. Basically shared their experience during the COVID time, how to unite students and faculty through the book reading to unite the campus various units. The second presentation actually was by State Representative Lance Yatma, who is a member of the House Higher Education Committee and also the chair of the Higher Education Subcommittee on Degree Conferral. The second presentation pretty much was a discussion, question and answer type of presentation. We particularly asked him about what are the current developed funding models are. That was I'm interested in. And also we have been involved and actively involved in listening to the meetings and trying to figuring out what we can contribute to setting up these models. The next meeting will be October 20. Hopefully I will be able to report you more on the specific acts we're interested in. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Li Chen? All right, moving on to our grad council representative, Scott Collins.
Thank you. Hope everybody's doing well. Given a report from our last meeting, which was October 5th, last week. The Ed Policies Committee is still working on a few items such as the language for the requirements for a second graduate degree, as well as the Duolingo requirements. Those things are still being discussed by the Policy Committee, and we expect the proposal to come, the resolution to come at the next meeting. An RME for an MS and PhD multidisciplinary biomed and biologic sciences was reviewed by the new programs committee. It was sent back to the college for some more discussion. The main concern in that area is the title. They say it conflicts with some of the other degrees and they're fearing confusion. So that's still being worked out. To go along with some of the previous discussion that took place, I think the Vice Chancellor for Research brought this up, but how there's 7.5% of the TAA has been retained for innovative teaching and research projects. That an RFP proposal document has been created, and it should be shared here in the near future for faculty to be able to request some of that support in those areas. And then right along with the previous conversation is Grad Council has quite a bit of membership on the R1 Exploratory Committee that has been formed by the Vice Chancellor, and we meet this Thursday. So that is my report.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We'll move on to our VCR.
Thank you. Thank you so much for leaving me about half an hour. I appreciate that.
I'm trying.
You're laughing now. Let me share my screen. We're sharing the screen. I don't see sharing the screen.
Yeah. So.
Could you
be able to share?
Okay. Okay. So I like this picture. This was during the DuQuoin State Fair. We had a table. We talked a little bit about the graduate school. These are the spring applications and admissions. 1,059 was last week, 1,130 is this week, 346 is how many we've admitted. You can see this is more than twice what we admitted last year. Spring is a really good year, a really good term, especially for international students. And you can see that 285 of these 346 are international. We looked at last year's numbers, and we only got about 32% of the international students who receive an I-20 to actually join us. That's a very low number. 55 to 60% is a better number. So we're looking to see what is going on. If we need to be faster, and by we, I mean from the moment the application is evaluated at a school all the way until the I-20 is sent out. Let me also point out that there is a delay always if the student does not provide their financial information on time. So it's not always us, sometimes it's their response as well. This is the fall numbers. Substantial increase, to say the least, from last year. Last week it was 313, now it's 415. There is a reason behind that, and it's not necessarily a very good reason. We tried something for about 20 days. We did not require an application fee. The goal was, we only advertised internally to the directors of graduate studies, to our students and so on. 74 of our students took advantage of it, and more than 500 international students did that. So we're not going to do this again because we're not sure that these students are really serious about coming to SIU. And also we don't want to flood the departments, the schools and the colleges with applicants, with a lot of applications that may not be useful. So it was something we tried, and I don't think it's going to work out. In terms of recruiting efforts, what we'd like to do is something called we need a better better name, but it's Finish Your Degree, working together with Extended Campus. We want to identify master students who have completed 21 hours and have left the university. We don't have a lot of students, master students, who don't finish. About, depending on the cohort, between 90 and 94% do finish within 6 years. But there's the other percentage that do not. And that's a substantial number. It's hundreds of students. So in this list, I'm showing you the degrees, the graduate degrees that we offer completely online. So we're planning to identify the students and reach out to them and see if they're interested in finishing the degree. But in order to do that, you notice that I'm saying we need a course-only option. Currently, the majority of a master's degree do require either a thesis or a research paper. It's very difficult to approach somebody who has left the university maybe for 4 or 5 or 6 years and tell them that you need to do a thesis. It is very common for master's degrees to, especially professional master's degrees, to be just course only. So we need to discuss that. There are a couple of programs at SIU right now who are course only masters. We want to see if we can extend that to allow us to be able to approach our students who have left us and might still be interested in an SIU Carbondale degree. Sorry. In terms of retention efforts, I know the Chancellor mentioned that, and David Shirley was here to talk about retention. We do really well with master students, but we lose 10% of our doctoral students in year 1, 20 by year 2, and 40 by year 6. These are students who do not graduate, who put in 6 years of studies, 6 years of effort, and leave. So we're going to start surveying them to find out the reasons behind that. We're also interested in yield, students who have been admitted and then who don't come, who don't join us. So we run a survey of these students. Let me see if I can get out. Okay, so let me, I'm sorry, I don't know if you can see that. I don't know if you will be able to see this. We'll see if it works.
We see your screen.
But do you see it now?
Yes.
Do you see this, the slate? Okay, good. So 59 of the students who were admitted and did not join us responded to the survey. I want to point out to you that 36 of them said, I want to defer my admission. And another 9 said, I will be attending. I don't know what that means. I guess they are applying again. We have reached out to every single one of these students, our recruiters have, and we're in conversation to ensure they apply or they really defer their admission. This is another number. Another 3 students saying they want to reapply in a couple of years, so we'll be in contact with them. Here's another interesting thing. These are students who didn't come to us. 55%, we were their first choice. And another 27.3 were the second choice. So more than 80% of the students who didn't join us, we were their first or second choice. You will see what was important to them. It was reputation, very important and critically important, but also the diversity was critically important and very important. Geographic location, very important and critically important. So these are interesting statistics, and we will follow up with the students. I want to show you one more thing, although the numbers here is the 23, 91% of them, 21 of the students who didn't join us did not visit campus. I think that's a very important statistic, and we have discussed it with the graduate school, we've mentioned it with the provost. We'd like to create a program where we can bring some of these outstanding students to campus to visit for a couple of days with their schools, with their faculty, with a student, with the fellow students, and see if we can get them. Can you now see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, so we talked about research. Thank you, Khalid, for mentioning that. We just created a set of proposal mentors. We had a request for proposal mentors. These are faculty usually senior faculty, associate or full professors who have participated in review panels, and we'd like to make them available to our faculty to be able to look at their proposals, evaluate them, assist with the proposals, and improving the presentation of the work. The goal is to be more successful in hitting on grants. So far, 7 faculty have volunteered, and you can see some of the agencies they're familiar with: Defense, Energy, NASA, NIH, NSF, and so on. And we're planning a meeting to discuss how to move forward. I've already had requests by some of our faculty to speak with these mentors. So also, we want to make sure that service, especially that important service, get recognized. And for every proposal, the proposal mentors will evaluate. They will get $750 in their activities account to use for research. November 1st, we have a research discovery workshop. The focus is climate and environment. We want to build collaborations across schools and colleges to go after large grants. You can see the agenda here. And if you haven't and you do anything related to the climate and the environment, and we want you to interpret that as broadly as possible, please come. Proposal development seed program, we're starting that. It's going to be, period of performance is going to be January to July. We're going to give up to 5 awards of $15,000 each to support the pre-submission phase of the grant. We have sent out the details, and we'll send them out again. And I'm hoping there will be a lot of participation in that. In order to incentivize faculty to come to our research discovery workshop, 2 of these awards will be reserved for faculty who attend the workshop. We also have the R1 Exploratory Committee. I think that was already mentioned. We have 17 members. 3 of them are from the Faculty Senate. I appreciate the volunteers. 3 of them are from the Graduate Council. Thank you. We have gone as broadly as possible, going from the Graduate Professional Student Council to the Faculty Senate, to VCs, to the Graduate Council, to the Graduate School. We're trying to be as broad as possible. The committee has been formed. We are meeting on October 12th to charge the committee and also divide it into subcommittees. And I've also personally have met with the foundation, with David Shirley, with HR, with finance, and I'm meeting with them to collect the HERD data as much as possible to be as correct as possible. And last but not least, Graduate Research Forum, October 26th. It was a recommendation by the Graduate Professional Student Council. It's sponsored by them, by the VC office and also the graduate school, highlighting research of our graduate students. It's open to all graduate students. If you have a graduate student, please tell them to participate. And also, we are looking for judges. So please volunteer to judge. And that's all I had for now. Any questions?
Thank you very much.
I was wondering whether the amount of money we pay our graduate students doesn't figure in who comes and who doesn't, and especially the way that we take back so much of what we pay them in fees. Is this under discussion?
Absolutely. And here is the relevant question that we asked. That's not the relevant question. I'm sorry. We only got, I think I can go back to this and show you. Let's say. Okay, here's the funding package. We only got 3 response. Can you see that?
No.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Let me see if I can. Am I sharing? There it is. Share the screen. There we go. You see it now, right? We asked about the funding package of the. We only got 6 responses. This one said 0 to 2,500 per year or more. This one is 1 student, it's comparable. 2 students said it's less. So half of them said it's less or comparable. And one student out of 6 said it's 5,000 more than SIU. We also looked at this. Again, we only got 3 answers. If you got the same offer at SIU, would you come to us? And 2 out of 3 said no. So I don't have enough data here, but I also do not have anything that says that our stipend packages are the ones that made the students not come.
The schools that I'm associated with and have served on their graduate committees consistently feel that our competitor units at other schools are offering more money and taking less of it back than we do. Just in talking, so it's anecdotal, it's not real evidence, but of course you don't have much evidence either there. So, but our feeling in philosophy and communication studies, at the very least, is that we have a hard time competing with our peer institutions with the amount of money that we pay the graduate students. We get graduate students, but we still feel like we would get 2 or 3 more a year in each of those departments if we could match what our competitor units, which are different from department to department or program to program, who you see as your competitors. But I think, and I'm guessing I'm not the only one in this room who thinks this, that if there's any way we could either take less back from them in fees or increase what we offer them to begin with, I think you might see our numbers go up.
I'm going to agree with you that I think that we need to compensate our graduate students fairly. They do the research, they do the teaching, they do a lot of other functions. Clearly, the data I have does not show that. That doesn't mean that's not the case. At the same time, I want to point out that we have faculty who submit grants are allowed to look at the stipend that has been agreed upon with the graduate union, the GA union, as a floor. So you can charge more in your grant and pay the students more. Also, there have been some units, schools that have agreed amongst themselves to pay their TAs more. That's not the case for PIs. They can pay anything they want above the minimum, up to what the National Science Foundation allows the maximum, which is approximately $36,000 a year.
Yes, actually, we know that a PhD student will need a minimum of 3 years, and on average, it's 5 years. And that's really a huge commitment from a PI or professor, you know, to take a PhD student. We also know that the average grant, most of the time, you know, is 2, maximum 3 years with most of the agencies today. So is there a way to establish a kind of bridge funds that when the PI run out of money to support that student, this way we don't lose that doctoral student at his 3rd year or 4th year, for example?
That's a very good point. Usually, you know, faculty have a continuity of grants. You know, the moment your grant's starting to run out your last year, so you submit the other grants. But I also understand that there are gaps. You know, not everything works out perfectly. We have no data to support that the students, 40% of the students leave after 6 years because the funding ran out. It could be a number of reasons. And as I said, that's why we're going to look a little bit, get a little bit deeper into it. And frankly, at 25 to 30% doctoral student dropout rate with a master's or whatever is not unheard of. You know, the PhD is something fairly competitive and difficult. As far as bridge funds are concerned, we have some scholarships, like a dissertation scholarship in the graduate school. These are limited in number. These are to support, for example, a student in the last year who's ABD. Again, they're finite funds. I wish that we had the flexibility to provide bridge funds to our students. And this is something that I would like to be able to consider in the future. But right now, in all honesty, we are really tight in terms of the funds that exist. The only flexible funds that my office has is indirect return. Everything else, for example, what the graduate school receives is state or local funds. So we don't really have a lot of flexibility to do so. Again, we do have fellowships for the graduate students, and I encourage you, if your student is in their last year, doing a dissertation, please have them apply. Also, we have fellowships, for example, for underrepresented students. Last year, we got 0 applications. So it's hard for me to believe we don't have a single underrepresented student in the graduate school. So please take advantage of these opportunities as much as you can. I appreciate that.
We have one more quick question and then we will move on.
Very quick question. You mentioned applicants perhaps a visit would help them to decide to come here. Can we request any funds to assist visits costs from your office?
This is the goal. The goal is to be able to provide some partial funding. We're just trying to figure out, I can tell you what I did in the past, and maybe we'll do something similar based on the distance from our campus. There was a different size of amount that we would pay the students to be able to come here, between $200 and $500. And we also focused on doctoral students. But what's very important is not so much the finances. Clearly, the finances are important. We can find a little bit of money. What is important is that the visit be worthwhile. They need to meet with faculty. They need to see the labs. They need to see the studios. They need to meet with current PhD students. And that's where I usually found that we had some difficulty motivating the schools to organize such a meeting. If you can organize such a meeting to, maybe we can bring 2 or 3 at the same time, let's discuss how to fund it.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Thank you for your report. Thank you guys for the questions. We are going to now move on to our last report from the Ad Hoc Committee on Institutional Rankings. Dr. Lee.
Okay, thank you. We have 4 business items to report to you. First of all, we showed 2 documents to all faculty senate. So one is about our general meeting, which we had last month, and second, the subcommittee of the faculty, student, administrative staff, the 3 subcommittees. So you have the document there. I'm going to make it brief. Okay. That's number 1. Number 2, as you know, our 2024 ranking is 280. And actually, this does not mean that we are doing bad. I mean, first of all, the pool or the number of institutions, national university in the past years, usually around 1,000. But in 2024, it increased to 1,500, that means 1,500. Then we examine the score of almost all the items. Our last year's score and this year's score pretty much the same. So that's when that means, okay, even though we are now 280, this doesn't mean we did bad than previous years. That's point 1. And second, the good news is that, okay, for 2024's criteria, the IDIC, faculty impact, which is consistent with Vice Chancellor Research, Dr. Zuzani's presentation. And faculty impact, very important. In the past, they didn't include faculty citation and publication. Now, US News, they include faculty impact and faculty compensation, faculty student ratio. That's why this is important to us. So that's something new. Okay. The criteria has been changed. Okay. And third, and I think we're going to have the next general meeting on October 20th, next Friday. In the meanwhile, the subcommittees, that means 3 groups, they are working on action plan and resources and that means responsible offices. So each group are working on, and we will report back to you. Now, would you like to add something more?
I think the only thing I want to add is that one of the goals that we have is in terms of coming up with some strategic plans for each subcommittee, is that these will eventually then hook into the provost's academic strategic plan. So, there's a feedback loop.
In other words, what we're doing will be in alignment with Chancellor Mann's Imagine 2040, as well as consistent with the provost Parker's academics strategic plan. We make sure we're on the same page. Any question, comment, please?
All right, thank you very much for your report. Is there any old business? Is there any new business? All right.
I just wanted to add something to an earlier discussion because it occurred to me only just now. Our colleague, Gary just left, but, the RMEs also go through the faculty association in an informal process, just like operating paper changes. And I probably should have said that, but it didn't occur to me when we were discussing RMEs. The same committee handles the RMEs to make sure that they're consistent with the collective bargaining agreement. But what happens is the president just passes it down, the president of the faculty association passes it down to the committee. Do you see anything wrong? No. Okay. You got any questions? And then those questions go to whoever happens to be the chair of this committee, which happens to be the faculty association president at this point. And so anyway, I mean, it's, but there's an informal process and something like that happens with operating papers too. So I'm not sure if I was clear.
I think you were.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
But it's RMEs as well as operating.
I also want to say thank you for sending out the listing of the operating paper status.
So that went out to the EC.
Oh,
I will send that out to everybody after this meeting's over.
okay.
Because that was our discussion, we had that discussion in EC. And I got permission to send that out, so I'll send that out at the end of the meeting.
Okay,
Sorry.
then I'll withhold my comment until next time.
But just for clarification, I will be sending out a list from the APAP listing what operating papers are where in the process, so everybody has a. And that will enhance our discussion, I think, we'll send it involved. Thank you guys. Before we do a motion, I want to say I'm learning this role and I'm learning how to time manage. So we're 5 minutes early. I feel a little bad about that because we could have had 5 more minutes of discussion. But I want to thank you guys very much for being on board with me and sticking with me as I learn this process. So with that, then I need a motion to adjourn. Motion.
Second.
Everybody ready to go? In favor? All right.